Hello, welcome to another Today in the Workshop. It's a bit of a bumper episode today because I messed up the filming yesterday with a different camera, but it should give us some more dynamic shots today because I figured out how to use it better. But what we missed yesterday was laying up the head tube, so I thought I'd show in the CAD a little bit of what the layup entailed. So the mould, or the part needs an accurate outer diameter, accurate-ish, just so that it looks nice and sits flush with all the bearings and the forks and stuff. But it also needs an accurate inside, just where the headset bearings sit. So these bits that sit in the end will create that. The yellow is the mould surface, and then the green is the actual part. And then these pink bits are those rings that we made yesterday. So they will be put in as part of the layup instead of having to have a load of gummy mess. So there's the mould in pieces, and on the top left and right are the two rings ready to be used in the mould. But unfortunately I just managed to film my chest for the whole day, so I didn't get any footage of actually laying this piece up. But here it is all cured up, so I'm going to get it out the bag and demold it quickly. So I got it out of one side easily enough, and sometimes you can just knock it out and give it a little pull, but it wasn't having it, so I popped it into this little Black & Decker workmate I have, because you can cant the jaws over rather than them being parallel, which meant I could just grab onto that side of the mould and pull out the part with a bar through the middle. Now these bits on the end forming the bearing seats are just sacrificial, unfortunately. I've tried a million times over to make them not sacrificial, but it's just how it is really. If I could get them machined out of some metal, then maybe I could do it, but just stick with them being sacrificial for now and have to polish up the final footage, the final part. But with a bit of heat on it, it just softens it enough to get a first little edge up, using the chisel carefully. And then once that bit's up, you can kind of twist out using some pliers or snips, and that's the part. So the seats look really good. They'll need to be polished to the final shape and dimension. I've got a little sort of sanding tool for that, and then the lines that you can see at either end of the part are little trim lines to follow, which again I'll do in time when it's post cured. Now I'm just gonna whiz the flash off the mould so it's slightly cleaner for when I come to it next, and I'll clean up everything here, and then I can go on to making the next part for today, which is going to be the down tube. So this new camera I've got, I was given it a while ago by someone who said they didn't need it for anything, and I think it's like a little night vision camera or something, so every time I bend down and look in the dark it seems to go into night vision for a second or two, if you wonder why it goes black and white. I've attached this little camera directly to my mask, so it's sort of sitting at about chin level. Let me know what you think of the footage from this. I'm worried it might be a little bit motion sickness inducing, but it gives much more dynamic shots of what I'm actually doing, and you can kind of see it a bit better. And I of course don't have to touch the camera at all while my hands are covered in resin or anything, so it works out quite nice. So that's all the vacuum bagging stuff prepared for later. I like to do vacuum bagging stuff without gloves on, because the gloves just stick to the gummy tape and it's much easier to slide over it with your bare hands. So once I've done all of that, I'll put some gloves on and then do carbon stuff. So the layup of this down tube has a fair bit going into it. It's got 3 layers of uni, and then 2 sort of plus minus 45s to create a kind of rudimentary biaxial. I know you can buy stitched biaxial off the shelf, but I wanted it out of this particular fibre because it's slightly better than what I can get off the shelf. So I'll end up making my own biaxial from this stuff. I managed to do it with minimal wastage, which I'm pretty happy with, and even the bits that do end up spare I can still use for other things, and I put them in my big box. So it also has a big bit of plain weave in it, which I can use as the template for creating this sort of not faux biaxial, like DIY biaxial, I guess. Just it takes a little while to set up and do, but it is worth it once it's done. Just while I'm doing all this, I could explain why these different directions of fibres are useful. I don't know how knowledgeable anyone watching is about composites and how they work, but when I talk about the angle of the fibres in relation to the tube that I'm laying up. The 0 degree is sort of longitudinally with the tube on axis. That's going to give it sort of the conventional tube strength as you'd think of it. Good resistance to bending over its length and stuff. But that alone is of no use in a composite tube, because otherwise it can just buckle and collapse on itself. So you want some in 90-degree hoop. You don't have to, but you want some close to 90 degree, because that will give a good compression and hoop strength to it. And then the 45s, they add compression and hoop strength and longitudinal strength, and they can add a kind of twisting, torsional strength to the tube. You'll see a lot of filament wound drive shafts in cars, like performance cars. I think a lot of drag racers use filament wound stuff because they can tune the torsional stiffness of the drive shaft really well if they want really snappy power transfer and things like that. In bike tubes, torsional rigidity isn't as vital, but it does still play a massive part into the feeling and the strength of a frame. So I like to put them specifically in the down tube, and then a couple of other tubes where I know the loading is just all over the place. So that's the justification for them there. Here I'm just beginning the layup. I mixed up a load of resin, and again with these cosmetic layers I want to remove those just tiny white binder bits from one side of the uni, trying to disturb it as little as possible. So this mould looks really, really rough, but physically it's actually quite smooth. So I think this is a fun bit of doing these videos that I can't really hide too much. I'm just doing like Instagram pictures or blog posts or whatever. I can pick and choose the images I show of things, or just show the finished parts, but doing the videos you get to see all the nitty gritty of it. Had an itch on my nose there, so just had a bit of an itch before I continue. So that first layer went down, and you could see as I picked it up there were some little air gaps in it. It just distorted not the weave, but just distorted the fabric a little bit. But what I was able to do was, once it was in the mould, by running the brush along it with just light pressure, it sort of aligns all the fibres again. I was hoping that the camera would pick it up, but obviously I was leaning down quite close in to see it, and so the camera didn't get it. But yeah, running my brush along like that aligns all the fibres in. With 3 layers of uni to put in, I started by doing the first cosmetic layer, and then I stacked up 2 layers to finish the 3-layer section. Decided I didn't like the song that was playing. When I'm running it through my brush here as well, I'm not adding any more resin or intending to add any more resin. I'm more just looking to squish all of the fibres down and coax out any air that's been introduced, because there should really be enough resin. Like, this process, doing this adds more than enough resin, it just may not be properly distributed. So to do the biaxial stuff, it's really hard to move it around if it doesn't have something to just kind of base itself off. So I lay it all up with the plane weave into one big lump. So I'll spend the next few minutes getting all of this lot set up and wet out on the table, all as one bit. And I'm intentionally gonna go a bit heavy on the resin and wetting out, because in a second I'll be squishing it all down. This bit's also fairly necessary for the way I'm making this, because I'd never be able to line all of this up in the mould or anything. It's much easier to be able to line it all up on the flat of the table. So with that all wet out, this is the vacuum bag that I used for the head tube. So it was going to go in the bin, but now it can have one last hurrah and be useful. And I can squeegee out any air and excess resin, which is why I said I wasn't too worried about going heavy on the resin, because I wanted to have some extra to move around here and be able to do this process. There you go, it's sat nice and evenly. That means everything's relatively well squished together. And it gives me an opportunity to hold it all together on this backing material and just trim the edges off. I made a slight mess up here, so I need to rethink my process, because usually I do this in between two sheets of plastic, so I can choose which side I remove. But I couldn't do it this time, so I had to go plain weave down. I would have rather gone the other way round, but I wouldn't be able to remove the plastic from that lump of carbon there without it losing its integrity. You can only really remove it at this last minute when you're getting it all inside the mould. So there's my pre-prepared tube gusset folded bag that I can lay down and start to trim off any excess. I have a use for that bit, so I'll pop it there. Fold this over and trim off any excess here as well. This is creating sort of big butts and butt joints in the layup, which is a bit annoying. I'd rather sort of scarf them in a little better, but I'm just doing things bit by bit for the moment. I can improve that process later. This will be suitable for now. I added that extra bit in there along what's going to be the top face of the tube, so it's just got a bit of extra there for bottle bosses and things later on. Tape's just going to hold it all stable while I'm moving it around and getting it all bagged up, just because it's a nightmare when it moves once it's all in the bag. So it's just a bit of a insurance policy really. Gonna wrap it in release film and a bit of breather, and again tape that up just so it sticks around where I want it to. I'm going to clean up the surface here. I've got some acetone and a rag. Grab the vacuum bag we prepared earlier. And get it in. As I say, I like to do this without gloves, and if I've got the time I like to go wash and dry my hands. Just makes the whole bagging process easier when your hands are sort of just at the right stickiness, whatever, that makes sense. So yeah, just go and seal that all up and get it tucked away. So with that all bagged up, that rounds out the day and the week. I work at the bike shop on Fridays, so I won't be in the workshop. I hope you've enjoyed following along with my work for the week, and let me know if you'd like to see more of this style of stuff, and I don't know, like and subscribe and all the social media kind of things. Thank you for watching.